All right, we have learned how to sketch the graph of an equation using a table of values. Today, we're going to look at another method that's going to work for sketching lines, which is all we've seen so far, though not every single equation is going to give a line. We will talk a little bit about that later. And we are going to see another method in a couple of classes that will also show us how to graph lines. Basically, we want to have a few different tools in our toolkit depending on the scenario. We want to have more than one way to do a problem. So today we're going to look at graphing using the intercept method. And so first we're going to have to define what intercepts are. An X-intercept of a graph is a point where the graph intersects or crosses or touches the x-axis, and a y-intercept of a graph is a point where the graph intersects the y-axis. Let's take a look at an example of a line and figure out what the intercepts are. Okay, here is the graph of a line. It happens to represent the equation 4x minus 2y equals 8, but that's not really important. I want to take a look at the intercepts. Now, an x-intercept of a graph is a point where that graph crosses the x-axis. If we look at this graph, it crosses the x-axis specifically right here, and that is at the point 2, 0. So in this case, the x-intercept is 2, 0. All right. The y-intercept of a graph is a point where the graph intersects the y-axis. If we look at the y-axis and we look at this line, it intersects right here at the point 0, -4. So the x-intercept is 2, 0, or just 2. Sometimes we just give the x-coordinate. So the x-intercept is 2, or 2, 0, and the y-intercept is 0, -4, or just -4, and those are the intercepts. I want to point something interesting out, though. If we look at the x-intercept, which was 2, or 2, 0, the y-coordinate of the x-intercept is 0, and that's going to happen for any x-intercept, because an x-intercept is on the x-axis, and all of the y-coordinates for points on the x-axis are 0. So the x-intercept occurs when y equals 0. So this occurs when y equals 0. This is an important piece of information that we're going to look at later. Now, similarly, if we look at the y-intercept is going to be a point on the y-axis, and every point on the y-axis has an x-coordinate equal to 0. So if we look at the y-intercept, this occurs when x equals 0. And this is actually a really useful piece of information because this will allow us to figure out what the intercepts are without graphing. If we have an equation and we want to find the x-intercept of the graph, we don't have to go through the process of graphing. We know the x-intercept occurs when y equals 0, so we can plug in 0 for y and then solve for x. If we want to know what the y-intercept is, well, the y-intercept occurs when x equals 0, so we plug in 0 for x and then we solve for y. So we can use algebra to figure out what the intercepts are, and we're going to use that to graph the lines. Now, I just want to talk really quickly about what sorts of equations are going to give us lines. An equation that can be written in the form ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are numbers, is called a linear equation and will have a graph in the shape of a line. So this example that we have right here, 4x minus 2y equals 8, is an example of a linear equation. It's okay that it's a subtraction instead of an addition, because here we just say that that value of b is a negative number, -2. All right, so anytime we have an equation written like this, it's going to be a linear equation, and its graph is going to be a line. We've used tables of values so far when figuring out how to plot these, but what we're going to do now is we're going to use the intercepts and we're going to graph using the intercepts. So we're not going to have to go through and make a whole table of values. We're going to use the intercepts, and let me show you what the instructions are going to be here. All right, there's going to be 4 steps here when we're graphing using the intercepts. First, we find the x-intercept by letting y equals 0 and solving for x. So we plug in 0 for y and solve for x. Then we find the y-intercept by plugging in x equals 0 and solving for y. Once we have those 2 intercepts, we can plot both of them on the xy plane. And then because we have a linear equation and we know the graph will be a line, we can connect those dots with a straight line. And that gives us a graph of the equation without having to go through and make a table of values. Let's do one example together. Let's sketch a graph of 6x minus 9y equals negative 18 using the intercept method, because that's what we're doing today. Now first, we have to find the x-intercept by letting y equals 0 and solving for x. So we're going to start with the x-intercept, and to do that, we let y be 0. If we let y be 0, we've got 6x minus 9 times 0 equals negative 18. Now anything times 0 is 0, so this term is going to be 0 and it's going to go away. We're just going to be left with 6x equals negative 18. And if we divide both sides by 6, that gives us x equals negative 3. That is our x-intercept. All right, let's find the y-intercept. To find the y-intercept, we let x be 0. If we do that, we've got 6 times 0 minus 9y equals negative 18. Anything times 0 is 0. This term's going to go away, and we're just going to have negative 9y equals negative 18. To get y alone, we have to divide both sides by negative 9. And I'm running out of room down here, so I'm just going to write off to the side. Negative 18 divided by negative 9 is positive 2. So the y-intercept is positive 2. So we've found the x-intercept, we've found the y-intercept. Now we need to plot these on the xy plane. Okay, the x-intercept was negative 3. So we find negative 3 on the x-axis, and we plot a point there. The y-intercept is positive 2, so we find 2 on the y-axis and plot it there. And then we connect the dots with a straight line. I would recommend using a ruler. I have a bit of practice here, so I can often do a good job on my own. And this represents 6x minus 9y equals negative 18. For more examples, take a look at the videos linked below so you can get practice using the intercept method.